Yes, it is officially time, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for the offseason to truly begin. And it's time for the Philadelphia Eagles to fix their wrongs and make things right again. Welcome to the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. I'm Asif Badi. Let's get right into it, guys. We're going to talk about what Howie Roseman can do to fix the wrongs that he had last season. We already saw what we did with the coaching staff with Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore as our hires. Good hires that I think a lot of Eagle fans are pleased with. And unfortunately, to a lot of Eagle fans, and even including myself, Nick Sirianni is at the helm. But the players seem to like him. Ownership seems to like him. Let's see how it goes with new coordinators in the building. But that's not what this episode is about. You can watch that episode at another time. I'll put it in the cards up top. You can see it over there. This episode is about our general manager, Howie Roseman, a guy who I have really praised over the past few years, but he has an important offseason right now. There's some people who are calling for the guy's job if he doesn't do a good job this year. I am not at that point yet. I think Howie Roseman is still one of the best general managers in the National Football League. I just think he had a little bit of a sloppy season, and he has a chance to right the wrongs. So let's talk about it. We're going to talk about the amount of cap space that the guy has and how much he could potentially have going into free agency, and maybe some of the guys that he should maybe try to key in on in free agency to help this defense out, because really, the defensive side of the ball is where the blunders were at. The offensive side of the ball, that's a matter of coaching, a play caller. You have that now in Kellen Moore, and the talent is there. Defensively, though, many guys severely underperformed. Many guys looked like shit, and many guys were just out of place on that side of the ball. In terms of being out of place, you fixed it with coaching. You got the coordinator that you truly wanted in Vic Fangio, and hopefully that brings us from a bottom of the pack defense to something around 25th, 26th on the yardage per game. Because despite our numbers last year, we were the worst defense in football. I don't care what you tell me. That defense was awful. Now you got the coach. So now what are we going to do to help him out? What players can we get to help Vic Fangio out? Because that is something that he's going to need. He has a lot of youth on the front seven, and that's probably the most talented unit on the defensive side of the ball with Nolan Smith, Hassan Reddick, Jalen Carter, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Moro Ajomo, right? There's talent there. On the back end, though, with the linebackers, defensive back is where the issue lies. Let's talk about just the cap space that he has right now. He has $20 million in cap space to work with to help fix that side of the ball in Howie Roseman. $20 million going into the offseason right now, and there's a way that he can make it more, and there are ways where he can get rid of some guys on the defensive side of the ball and try to make a pivot and go into the future. Let's start off with the one move, though, that every Philadelphia Eagle is curious about in terms of defensive cuts, and that's James Bradberry. Now, I'm sure you've heard on other Eagle channels that James Bradberry, if cut, would cost about $17 million in a dead cap hit, meaning no matter what we do, we got to pay that bum $17 million whether he plays or not. Here's where I'm at with James Bradberry, and you'll kind of see why I believe we should cut him despite the $17 million cap hit. James Bradberry, at this point in his career, while he has a track record of being up and down in his career where he has one great year, one awful year, one great year, one awful year. And if you look throughout his whole career, that's what his stats look like. And coming off maybe one of the worst seasons I've ever seen in a cornerback at as a caliber of player he was, you could expect an uptick, yes. But you know what? What is he? Damn near 30? The guy got his money. He can't tackle. Doesn't look like he can cover anymore. He looks a step slower, and he looked dejected. And maybe it was a matter of coaching. Maybe it was just a matter of scheme that they were running with him. But you know what? I want a guy to be respectable on the football field. And I want a guy who, if it's his job to go out, make tackles, make plays, to go out there and do it. And James Bradberry, get this. He allowed a passer rating of anybody who threw his way of basically 109. That's a phenomenal passer rating. And if your job is to defend a wide receiver and make a quarterback's life tough by throwing it in your direction, I'll tell you what, he did not do a very good job of that at all. Hell, you and I could have gone out there and done a better job covering. A 108, 109 passer rating is pathetic. And just because of that, I will eat. If I were Howie Roseman, I would eat $17 million of cap space. I don't give a damn. Because quite frankly, the guy looks done. And he should not be in Philadelphia anymore. So that's where I'm at with James Bradberry. If you agree, shoot the thumbs up button. Shoot in the comments section. Let me know what you think. But here's another reason why I would cut James Bradberry and take the $17 million cap hit. He goes on to the next player, in Kevin Byard. The safety acquisition from Tennessee that Howie Roseman acquired before the trade deadline finished. I think he only gave up like a 4th or a 6th round draft pick or something like that for the guy. And he had a moment or two. He had a big moment in the Kansas City Chiefs game. But outside of that, he did not necessarily play up to the hype that we were looking for in Kevin Byard. A veteran safety who's been a talented player for a long time, but just wasn't up to snuff. He's due for a $14 million cap hit if he signs on with Philadelphia. Now, I'm not willing to pay a guy of Kevin Byard's stature at this point in his career $14 million when we could have gotten a guy like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson last offseason or Jesse Bates last offseason for that kind of money. So for me, if you cut Kevin Byard, you save $14 million and you only have a dead cap hit of like $300,000. Excuse me, not $300 million. That'd be ridiculous. So let's do some math here. If I cut James Bradberry, it's a $17 million cap hit immediately. But if I cut Kevin Byard, I save $14 million. So just by that math alone, the total dead cap hit that I would have actually, if I cut Byard and James Bradberry, would be $3.3 million. And quite frankly, that's worth it. If I can get rid of a guy like Bradberry and save money at safety by cutting those two guys and only taking a hit of $3 million as opposed to 17, sign me up for that any day. And I hopefully Howie Roseman decides to do that, but I don't know. He may just keep James Bradberry and believe we need to make him live up worth to the contract because we paid him this money, we believe in his talent, all that stuff. Sometimes you got to take an L. I think if you cut Bradberry and Kevin Byard, you only take a cap hit of $3.3 million. And quite frankly, that's much more sustainable. That is an easier pill to swallow, in my opinion. And the last cut that I would make definitely on the defensive side of the ball is an Eagle favorite, a loved one in Philadelphia, in Avonte Maddox. Now, Avonte Maddox's cap hit, if he signs on with Philadelphia, I believe is $9.7 million. As much as I love Avonte Maddox, and as much as I love the energy he plays with every single time he's on the field, it's very far in between that he's on the field. And that's the damn issue with Avonte Maddox. He's never out there. And when you consider the fact that we have Isaiah Rodgers, who we acquired from the Colts, who's coming off a suspension, and not necessarily a suspension from injury or anything like that. He came off of the gambling suspension. So it's not like his body is taking a hit. It's not like he's been beat up. He's basically had a year off, and he's under 25, I believe. So when you got a guy like Isaiah Rodgers, who's a quality player and a quality slot corner, and Avonte Maddox is also a slot corner, a versatile player in his own right, but is constantly hurt, is constantly injured, and can never stay on the field, to me, it's a no-brainer to get rid of Avonte Maddox and save that cap hit, to save the $9.7 million. Because quite frankly, all that money that we accumulated here, going from $20 million into potentially being close to what? $27-28 million in cap space all of a sudden now, when you consider Bradberry and you consider Byard and you consider Maddox being cut. All of that money now, plus you could do other things like extend Hassan Reddick and extend Josh Sweat to help create some cap room and all that stuff. Those are things that you can do. But now you have about, close to $30 million in cap space. And let's just make that the round number that Howie Roseman works with. If he has $30 million in cap space, what does he have to do with that $30 million? Now, the thing we also have to consider is the amount of picks that he has in the upcoming draft. What does he have? He has 3 picks in the top 50. He's got a couple of third-round picks, a 4th-round pick, and like a bunch of 5th-round picks. So you also have to think $30 million, there has to be enough money left in the tank for us to sign draft picks. And to me, if we're going to want something sustainable, if you want something that's truly going to last a long time in Philly when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, he's got to do one of two things. He's either got to trade draft assets, like the later draft picks for picks down the road, which, Howie Roseman can do during the draft. But to me, he really only has room for maybe 1, maybe 2 free agent signings. And quite frankly, with the way this defense looked, any defender that Philadelphia talks to is going to have a lot of leverage in terms of wanting to be in Philadelphia and wanting to play for this organization. And the key group that I think Howie Roseman has to really focus in on, a group that I don't think he should try to draft, because I don't know about any of the linebackers in this upcoming draft. I know people talk about Jeremiah Trier Jr. I don't know about him. I haven't really done my draft analysis yet, so maybe I'll feel differently down the line. But there's a much more sustainable group of cornerbacks in this draft. I believe if he's going to draft guys in the first 3 rounds, it would be corner. We already know he's going to probably go offensive lineman to replace Lane Johnson at some point, get youth on the offensive line. I don't mind that either. But if you're going to draft anybody, go cornerback, go defensive back. In free agency, though, get someone who is a surefire, bona fide stud at linebacker. And the one guy that's been talked about in Philadelphia for a long time now is Patrick Queen. And if I were Philadelphia, that's the guy that I would try to go after in free agency. You got the cap space now in $30 million if you make those 3 cuts. Howie Roseman can also just make money up here because that's just who he is. That's just what he does. So $30 million is significantly more than what's actually there. You can use that space. You can use money to go after Patrick Queen and give him a contract for 3 to 5 years, and you're still going to get quality play from Patrick Queen 3 to 5 years down the road. And if you really wanted to bring back Zach Cunningham, I don't mind it. But you know what? It better be with Patrick Queen as opposed to a guy like Nakobe Dean, because Zach Cunningham and Nakobe Dean as a duo won't cut it. We already saw just this past season that it won't be good for the linebacking room. You need a guy like Patrick Queen in here. Patrick Queen would be the best offseason signing for Howie Roseman, and he has to do everything he can to nail that draft signing, or that pick, not the draft signing, the free agent acquisition in Patrick Queen, just to solidify and have respectability in the linebacking core. Because to me, I'll tell you what, Patrick Queen paired with Zach Cunningham sounds a hell of a lot better than Zach Cunningham and Nakobe Dean at the moment. And not that I don't believe in Nakobe Dean, but the guy can't stay healthy. And unfortunately, that's going to be a knock on him. And unfortunately, due to his size, he's going to get hurt again. And it's going to stink for Philadelphia Eagle fans. And if he's a depth piece, I wouldn't mind that either, as opposed to a starter. So, the moves that I think Howie Roseman can make right now. Cut James Bradberry. You have to eat the $17 million cap hit. It is what it is. But when you cut Kevin Byard, you save $14 million on your cap hit. And cut Avonte Maddox as well. All of that could potentially give you about $10 million in cap space together. And to me, $30 million in cap space with Howie Roseman and all the picks that he has in this upcoming draft, especially later in the draft, which means you don't have to give that much money to those draft picks that you get. It's a good way to allocate resources and a good way to allocate funds to dive in and go all in on linebacker in this free agency class. Because that's the position of need. That's the position you have to make sure you nail, or else Vic Fangio's defense isn't going to work. Every stop he's gone to, he's always had linebackers. And when his defense isn't good, it's because his linebacker play has not been stellar or he doesn't have great corners on the outside. And when you have a guy like Darius Slay, and I believe in the talent of Isaiah Rodgers, and I do like Eli Ricks and Keely Ringo because they are raw. They're young. They just need to be coached up, in my opinion. And you have Reed Blankenship there. And if Sidney Brown gets healthy, I thought he showed some quality plays. And then all you really need now is to get a safety, which I believe you can get in the draft, which I believe you can get good value in free agency. All of a sudden now, this defense, which went from the worst in the league, could all of a sudden become a competent defense, maybe a top 20 defense. Because at this point, if I get a top 20 defense with this offense and its potential, you're cooking with fire here. You really, really are. So Howie Roseman's got some work to do. Let me know in the comments section below what you think Howie Roseman should be doing, what he should prioritize in free agency. We're going to have more videos about what this Eagles organization should be doing going forward, how we're going to attack the draft. We'll break all that down in another video. But right now, this is the move. This is what we should be doing in Philadelphia. Because quite frankly, the defensive side of the ball needs a lot of work. And Howie Roseman, you're on the clock now. It's now time for you to put up or shut up. Because like you said, when you have your most aggressive and your best off seasons, Philadelphia goes forward and has their best seasons. Now it's put up or shut up time, Howie. Let's make a move. Hey, you got through a full episode of the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. Thank you for watching. If you want to support the channel, hit the like and subscribe button below. You can also check us out on Instagram at the Riding the Bench podcast with a K instead of C in the word podcast. And also check us out on audio platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're on there. All of that is in the description below. Please come back next time for the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. Thanks for listening.